Good morning, CLC. Welcome to today. I invite you now to take just a nice, deep, cleansing breath, breathing in the life that is now. And as you breathe out, release all that no longer serves you. Any stress or anxiety, just let it go. And if you feel so inclined, go ahead and take another nice, deep, cleansing breath. And as you breathe out, relax your body, relax your mind, and be here, now. Universal love enfolds me. Universal wisdom inspires me. Universal spirit enlightens me. Universal power encircles me. I am one, and all is well. As we begin this inner healing process, let me invite you to relax in quiet confidence, opening yourself to the miracle-working higher power. Now symbolize the unity of your thinking and feeling nature by touching your chest with your hand, and let my words act as your own, for your own inner healing, acceptance, and receptivity. I acknowledge that there is a power, intelligence, and wisdom greater than my own. I am in the midst of it, and it is in the midst of me, sensitive and responsive to my every thought, word, action, and feeling. I now make this true for myself by saying aloud, I acknowledge. Acknowledging this higher power working through my life, I admit that I am personally responsible for solving my own problems while being guided and assisted by something greater than myself. As I am ready to surrender the conflicts of my ego to the wisdom of this infinite presence, I simply speak these words. I surrender.
I surrender.
Knowing that forgiveness is the key to unconditional love and the feeling of heaven, I now unconditionally forgive anyone and everyone who has ever injured me in any way, real or imagined. And I now forgive myself for all of my mistaken judgments and their resulting actions. From my deepest level of understanding, I now say, I forgive.
I forgive.
Realizing that I continually experience the effects of my own thinking, I now choose to allow this higher power to recreate me deeply, filling my mind with thoughts that are only positive, constructive, loving, and beautiful. I call upon this divine inflow by stating aloud, I choose. I now center upon that one special idea that I'm willing to accept as real for me in this coming week. Visualizing that idea as already acted upon and brought to pass. In seeing my idea become a fact of my experience, I enjoy the happiness and peace of my thought fulfilled and gratefully speak these words. I accept. Knowing that I have an everlasting place in the midst of the power that sustains all creation, as well as the support of all those around me, I allow myself to relax in the peace of fulfillment and gratitude and say, I release.
I release.
Now, in my mind's eye, I envision the presence of someone near and dear to me. This can be a friend, a family member, a teacher or a mentor, someone who has touched my life in deep and loving ways. Someone who may not be physically present in the room with me this morning. I turn toward that image in my mind's eye and say, I'm grateful for the good in your life. Now I open my eyes, turn to the world around me, and joyfully speak to anyone physically present in the room or virtually on this broadcast, and share in confidence and gratitude and saying, I'm grateful for the good in your lives.
Can you tell what time of year it is? That's Mel Tipton did that. Thank you so much. Danielle brought king cakes. They are imported king cake. These are not. Okay, so the backstory in this, she texts me a few days ago. And she says, are you going to pick up a king cake or two for Sunday? And I said, sure. She says, where? Do you have a special bakery? No. Walmart, the usual suspects. She says, well, my son was just in New Orleans, and he brought home the best king cake ever. She says, I'm going to order them. What kind should we get? List like this. So we made an executive decision. We bought 2. They're half eaten already. We haven't even started. You gotta pay for these things by sitting through a talk. That's what you have to do before you feed yourself. But yeah, so it's that time of year. So there's a lot going on, and this is really a series on change, how change works, how we manage change in the world. And it's a special time of a recurring celebration that occurs every year through the efforts and of the ancestors, really, and all of us looking back and looking to see how we can best celebrate what is on the doorstep of Lent. And that's how this whole thing got started. Fat Tuesday got started because it's Skinny Wednesday, see. It's Ash Wednesday when Lent starts, so you got to get it out of your system. You got to party. Well, seriously, see, I was raised up north, and for us we had a Mardi Gras aspect going on. I'll tell you about that in a minute. But through my school and through my religious education, it was Shrove Tuesday, not Fat Tuesday. It was Shrove Tuesday, and Shrove is drawn from the Old English word shrive, or shreve, which means to confess your sins, do penance, and receive absolution. That doesn't sound like a lot of fun, does it? But while you're doing that, you get to eat pancakes. That's the thing is Shrove Tuesday, not king cakes, but pancakes, all kinds of pancakes. So that was, that was part of the deal. And then at midnight on Tuesday, which if you're a kid, you're not still up usually, but it's that everything changes now, and it's Lent, and it's a time of great, let's say minimalism, great simplicity and so forth, and getting ready for the resurrection of Christ at the end of the 40 days. What I didn't know at the time, I had an uncle who was Roman Catholic, and behind a crucifix in their home, in my aunt, they had palm fronds, that they'd pick up on Palm Sunday. What I didn't know was that on Shrove Tuesday, so 10 and a half months later, you take those palm fronds back to the church and they burn them, and those become the ashes that go on your forehead the next day, which is Ash Wednesday. Isn't that cool? So there's like a lot of planning that goes into it. And I tell you this because I want you to realize that even here at Creative Life, nothing is really random, okay? A lot, it may look that way, and we work very hard to make it look that way. But it's actually a very intentional, very scripted kind of a process that we have going on here of spiritual education and a celebration of the seasons. Now, who else today in a spiritual setting on a Sunday morning is observing Mardi Gras? I don't know, but we do, and we have, and we will. And there are three primary colors that were assigned to Mardi Gras by the crew of Rex back in the first part of the 20th century, and they are purple and gold and green. And I'm wearing purple today because I wore green last week at Ruth's Celebration of Life, and I'm not wearing yellow because I'm just not. So, and I was reading how these colors were selected from heraldry, because the guys, and they were guys who were part of that crew that began a certain parade at the New Orleans iteration of Mardi Gras, they went back to ancient heraldry. And one of the things, I don't know if this is significant, but I learned this too, is that in heraldry, the making up of coats of arms, you know, it says color can never touch color and metal can never touch metal. And that's why the green and the purple have to be separated by the metal of the gold, okay? So I'm thinking of metaphysical implications of all of this to balance out the energy and to determine something about justice and power and faith, or justice, faith, and power. And there's an argument that goes on about which order they should be placed in, or even if those should be the three proper terms, or if for justice we should use fortitude, and if for faith we should use good hope, and if for power we should use honor. This going back to heraldry, and all of this contained in a fascinating article in New Orleans Magazine from about 10 years ago, where somebody dug all this stuff up. So distilling all of this down, giving you a lot of random information, and one more random story I want to tell you, just which has nothing to do with any of this, just because I think it's really cool, and I wanted to tell you about it, if you didn't know. Do you watch a television program called The Masked Singer? Okay, several of you do. No. I love it when people say, no, not me. I'm watching the McNeil-Lehrer Report. So, I'm watching Rocky and Bullwinkle, you know. The Masked Singer, the premise of this is they get a bunch of celebrities, current celebrities, and they put them in big elaborate costumes, and they sing. And a panel of judges tries to guess who these people really are under the costumes. They sing like standards. They sing Sinatra type things or stuff out of the American Songbook, you know. And so this past week, they had an array of these people, and they all sang. And there was this one that was a giant gnome with the little hat, you know, but 7 feet tall inside this cavernous costume. And this person sang really, really badly.
Oh.
Okay? So they got voted off right up off the bat. And when you get voted off, and I didn't see this. I read about this afterward because I don't watch it either. When they got voted off, this person stepped forward and they came out of their costume, and it was the 97-year-old Dick Van Dyke.
Oh, my goodness.
And this panel lost their minds. And you can see this, you can watch this. One of them burst into tears. Another one of them said, "You are comedy. You are why I do what I do today." How good-natured of this man. Does he need the work at 97 to put himself through? They asked him what it was like on the show. He said it's hot and dark inside that costume. I just wanted to tell you that because there's just sweet and wonderful things that go on in the world. Okay. My biggest gyration in mind in putting this together today was in terms of faith, power, and justice. I like to put faith first. It's kind of what I do. It's part of my training. It's part of my work. I think, well, if we have faith, then we'll execute justice. We'll behave in a just way toward one another, and this will grant us all power. This will usher us back to the access of spiritual power that we may have surrendered along the way. But there's another way of looking at it which puts justice first. That justice leads to faith, leads to power. So I present this for your consideration, that the justice is the awareness of a spiritual law, divine implementation of spiritual law, that somehow behind the scenes, behind the human aspect of all of this, of all of the choices that we make, there is something that works. There is something functional that cannot be derailed, that is producing and producing and producing for us, whereby then we have the option to accept or reject, to love or to judge. We bring divine justice into daily life. We bring it into what we're doing with the next passerby. We bring it into every communication that we have. And the thoughts, the part of us that is least recognized in all of this, the thinking that we do, that doesn't necessarily get verbalized, doesn't necessarily get acted upon. What am I thinking? What am I expecting? What am I condemning? What am I critiquing within my own mind? If I can bring myself into alignment with divine justice, I will be a place where justice occurs. I was reading this other material this week that has to do with an argument that's gone on between mysticism and experientialism. And what that means is that there's a school of thought that says the mystical experience of communion with the infinite and all is great, except it tends to be very private and personal and even antisocial, where you're no longer concerned about anybody else's reality because you're having such a great and groovy time dealing with the divine expressing through you. On the other hand, there's experientialism, which says that anything that is divine or anything that is of spiritual value, is only achieved through service to others, is only achieved. So I'm thinking this reminds me of Martin Luther and some other stuff, having to do with faith versus works. What I propose is a balance between the two. What I propose is that each one of us go into the mystical aspect of our communion with the infinite and at the same time take good care of each other. And this should not be that hard to do. And why I bring this up is because sometimes I think in spiritual settings we expect, when we turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understand God, that everything's just going to kind of work out and we'll just watch it all roll by, when in fact we are uniquely responsible. There's a song that we're going to sing at the end of the service today which comes around every week like Mardi Gras comes around every year. You can count on it wherever you are on the face of this earth. You're going to hear, if not in a place like in this place, in a place like it, you're going to hear a song called Let There Be Peace on Earth, and let it begin with who? Me. Doesn't say let it begin with the Chinese. Okay? Doesn't say let it begin with the people over here who, if only they would understand, or even let it begin with my past. Let it begin with the unredeemed self. No, it says let it begin with me, and it's all in this moment. Let it begin. And let it begin when? Next week? Year from now. Let it begin right now. Why? Why are we saying this? Is that not self-absorbed? Let peace begin with me. Then I have peace, and I've got mine, and I'm good to go, Like I've filled up at the station. No, it's because when I am at peace, there's one more place on the planet that is at peace. And if there's 10 of us or 100 of us or 1,000 of us all singing this song, and not just singing the song, but really feeling it and going with it, then there's that number of people who, at least until they leave the building, are in a spirit of peacefulness. and peace has broken out. And Ernest Holmes, our founder, famously said in the Sermon by the Sea, which he gave not long before he moved off this earth, he said, if only there were to arrive on earth 1,000 people who, and then he made a list, 1,000 people who were so redeemed of the unconscious burden of judgment and fear, that they tried to do the right thing. We've been seeking forever that magic number. They call it critical mass, okay, where the whole thing just tilts in the direction of positivity. But even that is passive, because it's like we're standing back and we're waiting for, well, if only more people would get on board this train, then no, that's not how it works. Because while they're getting on, you could be getting off. You know what I'm saying? It's like when other people decide that they're going to be loving and forgiving, you could be fed up with it. I've been doing this for weeks now, and you say, and I still don't have my good. So maybe, resentment's not comfortable, but it's familiar, and maybe I'll go back to that for a while. And so somebody else has kind of ascended to this, and it's a peril that people who've been in metaphysics for any length of time face, where they think, I don't have to do the work anymore. I can coast on what I've laid up, the good karma that I've put in, and all the classes and workshops and books and all of this, I've got it handled. It's a peril for people in my line of work, in the ministry and practitioners and so on. It's like, I don't have to go to the well today because I drank deeply, 10 years ago. Well, again, that's not how it works. Why? Because it's kind of like this. I don't know, this analogy came to me, and it's not great, but you're going to hear it anyway. Imagine a celebration, like Mardi Gras, let's say. Imagine a celebration, this parade, and there's floats and there's stuff and beads being thrown, and there's music, and it's great. Well, that's here, okay? Outside of town, it's not going on. And in the next state, it's not going on. And on Mars, it's not going on, and so on. There's a localization to things where, something is happening in the moment, and around it, there's something else. That something else is the consciousness of the world, the outer world, or what we can call the collective unconscious, that has within it, it's not partying today. It's not parading through town. It's not doing music. It's got everything in it. It's got everything that's ever been. A bunch of unpleasant stuff, a bunch of really wonderful stuff, and it's all in there. And if you don't modulate, and I don't modulate what we're drawing down from that, we take potluck. We take potluck. And we don't know what that's going to look like. You see? If we say, well, I'm going to abdicate my implementation of justice for a while, because I feel like, I don't know, righteously indignant. I'm the only one doing this. I'm the only one keeping the high watch. If we take that attitude and we step down from that implementation for a while, potluck starts to creep in. And we start to doubt everything. We start to doubt our own identity. We become fearful. And then we become weird. Off of fearful, we become weird. And then in our weirdness, we can conceivably become dangerous. We can become, unsocialized, I guess. So my point in this is we're responsible. And they tell you in a talk, by the way, any of you ever want to be a public speaker, one of the things they tell you is never say my point is, because if you have to say that, it means you haven't made it yet. And people are like, oh, okay. But my point is that we have an unassailable responsibility to see justice activated. Now, I had a very interesting Zoom call yesterday with one of our practitioners who lives at a distance about a project we're cooking up. There are all kinds of projects always being cooked up, And he brought up the idea of how it is that we manage our consciousness in a certain way along certain lines. And every now and then we will say, I choose to operate at a higher level. Somebody will say, I choose to serve. I choose to serve the world, like our beautiful Ruth said. when, using her as an example, as I know she wouldn't mind, when Ruth said to the universe, to the night air, okay, I choose to be a service to the world, people lined up in the unseen before they lined up at the actual door. When you commit to be a teacher of God, when you commit to be somebody who holds the high watch, they also serve, as Milton said, who only stand and wait, you know. When you choose to do this, you get to operate at a higher level of responsibility. Put it another way, when you decide that your mind really is creative, get ready for a bunch of work. Get ready for a bunch of assignments and ideas that won't leave you alone, that'll pester you, okay? This is true even in the simplest things we've talked about before. When you pick up a guitar and you say, well, I think I'm going to learn to play this. All of a sudden, the gods of music, this is what they called them in the old, the muses, you know, the gods of music are all around, Apollo and who's the other one? Help me out here. Okay, gods of music. Well, they're going to Google them. One name just escapes me, you know. But they all, Lysistrata, I don't know, they all line up behind you. They say, well, here's some ideas. And then what we tend to say is, whoa, I'm not ready. That's not how it works. When you place yourself in the divine current, this is something Emerson said, when you place yourself in the path of the divine current, you get these ideas. So if you decide that you want to be somebody who maintains a focus on spiritual law in this life, when you decide you want to be somebody who wants to see justice done across the board, realize that all of a sudden you've got on a bright orange vest, like a rescue worker, or green vest, or whatever they wear, you know. All of a sudden you're now singled out as somebody to do the work, in the world, which does lead us to faith. Because it's a whole lot easier to have faith in a spiritual system that works after you've seen it work. You know? After you've used it in some way. Back in the day, in religious science, as silly as it is, and we've talked about this before, one of the assignments in early classes was to manifest simple things like parking places using prayer. And people laugh at that, and they ridicule that and so on. But the fact of the matter is, do you believe that right now you can have an absolutely enchanting and totally fulfilled life? No, not yet. Okay, do you believe you can manifest a parking place? Well, sure, somebody's got to leave it at some point, right? So start there. Start with hitting the green lights on. I actually did that today. I hit green lights all the way down Spring Stubner, and I looked like I knew what I was doing. Other cars on the road, they're slowing down. They're working their pedals more, and I'm like, I got this, baby. I got this. The green lights all the way there. I started channeling the Blues Brothers. I said, I'm on a mission from God. All right? I gotta get there, and I gotta do some conga playing. So, which I didn't know till I got here, but that's how it worked. So when you work on in the small ways to build the big faith, and I cannot stress this enough, that faith is not the in case of emergency break glass fire extinguisher thing on the wall that you go to when everything else, has been exhausted, because you won't know how to break the glass, or the glass won't break, or you won't trust that if you do break the glass that something good is going to happen. You see what I'm saying? It's like with prayer. You got to use prayer. You got to use prayer, not because prayer will stop working of its own accord if you don't, but because you'll lose the calluses on your fingers like the guitar players have. You'll lose agency with it. So you've got to keep the faith going. So start with the faith that you have. How do you do that? If you have a hard time having faith in God, I don't blame you. Lots of people shake their fist at God and say, how can this happen? How can this world happen? What I suggest is start by developing faith in other people. Now, I know I'm supposed to say, have faith in yourself. Well, that's a byproduct of all of this. Because nobody that I know has ever been told to have faith in themselves, so they did, you know? So they just like started to, like, right? You know? It just doesn't work that way. I've been reading, the theme in the magazine this month was authenticity. Next month it's vulnerability. These are wonderful things. And I've never known anyone who's been told, you should be more authentic. And so they did. If they were told that, and if they started being something different, what they tended to be was what they thought I thought they should be. That's not authentic. That's obedient. You know, authentic is like just drop the pretense and be who you are, and you don't get that from a lecture. You get that from inside your own skin by feeling comfortable in the world. Anyway, you know, so try having faith in yourself. Yeah, but have faith in other people. Have faith in the best of people. Affirm and know that you're going to meet people who want to be your friend. This sounds like Dale Carnegie, doesn't it? People who want to be your friend. People who have some valuable contribution to make to your life, and what's more, who will receive the valuable contribution that you make to them. And believe this not just in of friends and loved ones and the big relationships that we have that we put on social media, you know, but the people that you encounter in passing. Believe that everybody has something valuable to contribute. And so your faith grows. And now you're living on a street, in a neighborhood, in a town, with people who are kind of hitting it off and getting along and looking out for each other and supporting one another. And it feels great. There's a wonderful Todd Rundgren song about that, by the way. And so it's easier then to believe that there's this overarching essence of love expressing through everyone. And then that brings us to power. And in the world's way of looking at things, in the culture's way, the secular culture, which gets beaten up an awful lot, and the secular culture is pretty cool, but when it's too secular, it gets all full of itself. The secular culture is basically the collective ego, you see. And it's like, you have an ego and I have an ego, and egos are wonderful things until they think they are. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Because when they think they are, then they're in charge. And then they're an ego. And then you bring them things like silence, you know, and self-reflection and even grief. And the ego says, I don't have time for that. I'm busy. I'm busy being the ego. And all of a sudden, you've got a life that kind of goes off the rails, you know, as a result of ego. But the ego by itself is you know, taken on its own accord. If it weren't a suitable thing, we wouldn't have one, you know. And the ego is really just the sense of self that we've established. Well, the collective ego, the collective opinion of things, the secular mind, makes a big mistake when it puts power first. When it puts power first. And it says faith is great on Sundays or whatever your Sabbath happens to be, you know, or it's kind of antiquated and sweet, you know. It's the stuff our grandparents did. They had faith, and Grandma had the Bible open, and, you know, all this kind of thing. But today, not so much. And just as well, that's about other people, and that's about, I don't know, it's not my concern, because I keep my nose clean, and you know, I'm in by dark, and on and on and on, all these things, you know. So it's easy to, again, kind of vacate responsibility for all of this. But when we put power first and say, you know, I forget, I think it was, I hate to get this wrong, but oh well, I think it was Gore Vidal who said, everything in this world would work out beautifully if people would only do as I say. You know, that kind of power corrupts absolutely. Power has to be used judiciously, and real power is love. Real power is love. Kingdoms have risen and fallen. Great civilizations have slid into the ocean. But though I am not a practicing Christian, I have the greatest, I mean the greatest respect for Jesus the Christ, who is venerated to this day, who grew up in a remote area of the world, and very little is known about him and very little is written about him. And the intriguing thing to me about him is not the promise of eternal life, which I think I had anyway, and all of us do. It's love one another. It's that love is the greatest power that there is. It's the greatest power that there is. And it will not bring you, love will not bring you riches. I started to say this at Ruth's memorial, about how nobody goes into social work to become rich or famous. They go into that because of this heart that's just exploding with love and kindness and service. And it's not that this love power is going to bring us our weight in gold. It's not that we're going to be installed in high offices or anything else. It means that we'll recognize what it is we really need and be satisfied with that. And we'll stand in, yes, our own authenticity, and yes, our own vulnerability. And we will feel our lives. And we will not be hiding out from anything. We won't be running from anything. We won't be haunted by things. And one of the greatest gifts I could wish for anybody is to not be haunted by things, either things of the past or things currently happening they feel they're missing out on, regrets of I'm never going to get to visit Portugal or whatever because I'm running out of time or there's not enough this, to be okay with where you are and to adapt to that is real power. And here's the ironic thing about power. When you stand in real power, you don't need to show that you stand in real power. It's not a gesture. It's not a pose. It's not a stand. It's real love. So when I look at the Mardi Gras culture, so that's justice, faith, and power, and my riff on that. And when I look at the Mardi Gras culture and the Mardi Gras Indians, who I spoke about last year and the year before, and I thought I'd let them rest this year. I'll bring them back up. But you can look them up. You can look them up again. And the crew of Zulu, the first African-American crew from 1908 that marched in now integrated parades. It's not about the marching, and it's not even about the music, though at this time of year I listen to the Meters, and I listen to Fats Domino, and I listen to Irma Thomas, who's still with us, gratefully. And I get filled with this spirit. And you know what it says to me? Family. It says to me, family. It says to me, okay? Nuclear family, extended family, neighborhood family, town family. That we are family, all of us in this life. All of us in this life. And we all have different stories. And we all have different places we come from. And me being a Yankee kid, with the pancakes and the Shrove Tuesday and stuff, a weird sidebar to my life is that in the 1920s, early 1920s, my grandfather got a job offer, business, went into some kind of business enterprise, I'm not really clear what, in New Orleans, out of New York, and moved the whole family down there. And while they were there, his wife, my grandmother, got pregnant with my mother, and she was born in New Orleans. And she left the town very young, but it haunted her in a good way. And she kept going back, and as soon as I could sit up and take notice, she was taking me there. And it's really kind of peculiar that I wound up here and not there to spend most of my life, and there's a wonderful reason, and that reason is in large part you, here at Creative Life. But there's something about this that runs through my veins, this call. So what I encourage you to do is Mardi Gras is not till Tuesday, so you got a few days you can do this legitimately and not feel like you're overstepping into Lent where we're supposed to have no fun and just, ride it out. Google some music. Look up the Preservation Hall Jazz Band. I just sent some very cool stuff out to some of you. Immerse yourself in some of the lore. Look for the mystery and the magic behind all of this, because I tell you, it's there. And somebody was on to something, and nobody knows who. But if you bring together justice or fortitude, the strength to have the just mind and the just heart that tries to do the next right thing. If you have the faith, or as also is put, the good hope, the trusting heart that knows that it's using a spiritual principle that is certain and dependable, and if you have the power, or as put in another context, the honorable behavior. You have all of these things put together. What else do you need? That's right there is the complete package, and it serves as a dynamo of power for the implementation of great good in your life and beyond, and the fulfillment of your dreams and so on. So when you come back next week, as I'm certain you will, and those of you watching online, join us for Between Chance and Choice as we wrap up the Change series, and also the aspect of Black History Month that we are observing here. And the calendar turns. Black History Month is typically February, except where it's October. Things move around. There's also Women's History Month, and that's coming in March, except some places it's also October. So I don't know, but anyway, we're gonna do that, and it's going to be a 2-month series through March and April, and I'm going to introduce you to a number of women teachers of New Thought that you might never have heard of, who contributed wonderful things. And then in April, Reverend Lisa, in her daily readings on Facebook, is going to be sharing out of a book, a collection of 365 writings of prominent women in New Thought, many of whom you've not heard of. Not all of these were ministers, not all were practitioners. Some wrote things that were self-published and disappeared, 100 years ago, but the person who curated this collection turned them up, and it's fascinating and wonderful stuff. So that will be coming up in March and April. And one last thing, there's a Black History Month celebration in Tamina, and Danielle is going to tell you, so pay special attention. I'm saying it now because I know the announcements get cut out of the YouTube list. So I want to say it now so you hear about it. But Danielle, it will be the information. If you're watching this on YouTube after this afternoon, you'll have missed it. But anyway, you get the picture. It's on our Facebook page. There's a whole graphic about this, and Danielle will tell us more about it in a moment. All right.
So as our ushers make their way to the back, I would like to ask, is there anyone here for the first time today? Please raise your hand. Welcome back, everyone. No, everyone I already knew, but I have to get in the habit of saying it, because then I forget when someone new is actually here. So I have to say it even though I know all of your faces. So welcome back, everyone. We're happy to see you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being a part of today with us. We love your energy. We love your presence. We love your love. And we also love your financial support for us and your monetary donations. So thank you for everything that you give to this center. It is because of what you give to us that we can be here and give back to you. Now, with that, I would like to invite you all to say with me, divine love, through me, blesses and multiplies all the good I am and have, all the good I give and receive. I am prosperous now, and so it is.
Okay. I simply mentioned I write up because I'd seen the thing about Jimmy Carter but didn't know, and a friend of mine, Reverend Patrick, who I graduated with, well, he was a senior when I was a freshman, made this post, and I thought it spoke to the life that Jimmy Carter has led. I don't know what Jesus does on Saturday nights, but tonight he is dropping whatever is coming down, whatever is to come down, and greeting Jimmy Carter at the pearly gates. Welcome home, Jimmy. I've wanted to meet you for such a long time. So I just thought that was really sweet and a tribute to a man that, whatever your political beliefs are, this man has lived a life of service. What he did for the community that he grew up with, like he turned part of his farm, if not all of his farm, into a solar farm to help power his community. The man was like 97 and out working for Habitat for Humanity. And he was in the hospital, got released from the hospital, and the next day he was back at Habitat for Humanity. So, dare I to grow up to live that life? Dare you to grow up to live that life? When you look at a life of service, that's what it is. So, in that knowing, because I believe Jimmy Carter is still with us, and I will remind you, hospice is not necessarily end of life. He could rally and come back. So, it's Jimmy Carter, who knows? Let's know together that there is one life, one power, one presence, one love. And if love truly is the greatest power, then each and every one of us are divine channels for that love. We channel the greatest power there is into this world, into all the amazing things that love does. And so I'm knowing now, as we reach out into this world with that love, that amazing things happen. That healing happens, that peace happens, that people find out who they are and stand in their authenticity. That people look to their role models and say, that's what I want. And the universe says yes. And brings us the opportunity to become the best version of ourselves, the biggest version of ourselves, the most loving version of ourselves that is possible. And I know this with all of the gratitude in my being. I am grateful for a teaching that teaches me that I can stand in my own power, that you can stand in your own power, and that power is love. I am grateful for this community. I am grateful for each and every one of you. I am grateful for the ministers, the practitioners, the musicians, the technology, those of you watching at home and later. And I'm grateful because grateful feels good. Try it. You might like it. And I release my word knowing it is done, even as I speak these words. And so it is.
Say it with me now. Something wonderful is happening through me.
Something wonderful is happening through me.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my body.
I feel it in my mind.
I feel it in my
I
mind.
feel it in everything I am.
I feel it in everything I am.
I choose it.
I choose it.
I trust it.
I trust
I
it.
use it.
I use
And
it.
I love it.
And I love it. And so it is.